Hello all, my name is Masha Pearl, Executive Director of the Blue Card, the only organization in the United States with the sole mission of assisting Holocaust survivors. Welcome to the latest episode of Stories of the Holocaust, Overcoming Historical Trauma, where we spotlight Holocaust survivors who have led miraculous lives despite massive communal traumas. Today we are joined by Dr. Edith Eger and her daughter, Audrey Eger Thompson. Dr. Edith Eger was born in Hungary and was the youngest of three daughters in a close-knit Jewish family. Before the German invasion, she was a member of the Hungarian Olympic gymnastics team. Her sister Clara was an accomplished musician. Dr. Eger will share with us her miraculous story of near-death experiences in Auschwitz and a death march. In her own survival and healing, she has done many academic studies of psychology and has influenced theories on choice and has helped thousands of military personnel and other traumatized patients. She has received many honors and awards from dignitaries such as Queen of Holland, professional as well as corporate institutions. Dr. Edith Eger's book, The Choice, is a New York Times bestseller, and its sequel, The Gift, 12 Lessons to Save Your Life, are a must-read for professionals as well as general audiences. After reading the book, people such as Oprah have said, "I will be forever changed by Edith Eger's story." Audrey will discuss how growing up with Holocaust survivor parents has impacted her personal and professional life. It is an honor to have both of you here with us today. Dr. Eva Fogelman, our moderator for the series, will begin the discussion.
Welcome, Dr. Edith Eger and Audrey. We are very, very pleased to have you with us today. And Edith, if it's okay to call you Edith, I know that you are an individual who lives in the present. And as a Holocaust survivor, I think that's one of the things that certainly has helped you overcome the trauma that you experienced. But I hope it's okay for today's discussion. I'm going to be taking you back to the past, and then we will get to the present, both with you and with your daughter, Audrey. So I'd like to begin, if you can tell me a little bit about your mother and father, a little bit about their background.
My mother married my father, but my father told me, because I became his confidant, that she married down. In Europe, you either marry up or you marry down. That she only married a tailor. Well, the tailor became a wonderful, wonderful designer and told me that I'm going to be the best dressed girl in town when I grow up. So, Papa, please watch me. I'm wearing an Escadas clothes, and I know that you would be satisfied. I miss you. I wish you were here. And I know you died in Auschwitz after we arrived, and Mom as well. So I'm here to tell you that I never forget what happened. I don't even know what it means to overcome, but I know that I came to terms with it.
Before we start with how you overcame, maybe you could tell us a little bit of what it was like for you to grow up before the Germans invaded. You had a whole life. You were 16 when they invaded, so you had a whole life.
Well, after two girls, my parents really wanted a son. Magda was playing the piano. Clary was a child prodigy. She played the Mendelssohn violin concerto at a very, very young age, like 6. And so they really wanted a son. And I came along. I think I became the runt, the disappointment. I was very shy, painfully shy. And I spent a lot of time alone, which actually helped me when I was in Auschwitz. Because if you were depending on other people to take care of you, that wasn't there. So I think I had a childhood where I learned how to be alone and how to find the answers from within, and that was very useful. I was a very, very learned child because my mother told me one day, I'm so glad you have brains because you have no looks. And I think that was very helpful because I became very erudite and I became Dr. Edith Eger and learned and studied and had my own book club. I had a boyfriend and we were very, very, very Zionistic. We were going to go to Palestine and we were going to fight. And we were part of the Betar. I remember meetings that we attended. My boyfriend, unfortunately, was killed the day before liberation, but he told me I have beautiful eyes and beautiful hands. And I would go to everyone every day, tell me about my eyes, because if I survive today, then tomorrow was very important. Tomorrow I'm going to be free and I'm going to see Imre.
That was one of the things that certainly helped you overcome the nightmare that you had to live through after the Germans invaded. How did you get into? You were a ballet dancer, and then you got into gymnastics. How did that happen?
Well, I was putting the two together. My ballet master was wonderful because he held me one day and said, your ecstasy has to come from within. But I didn't know that word, ecstasy, what it means. When I was in Auschwitz, I remembered that word and what it meant. He told me that it is important for me to develop my inner resources. And that's what my mother told me in the cattle car. She held me, and I say that every school when I go to, that my mother told me, we don't know where we're going. We don't know what's going to happen. Just remember, no one can take away from you what you put here in your own mind. That's the first thing that I tell children when I go to school. Stay in school. Please don't smoke pot. I do a little preaching too because I can afford it. I'm 94 years old. I can say anything I want.
You mentioned that you were Zionist. How was your family Jewish? How did your family observe their Yiddishkeit before the war?
My mother was kosher, and you should have seen her making a challah Friday. It was an art piece. I mean, it was just a magnificent way that she did everything by hand. She just bought the flowers and the eggs, and she made all the pasta. She did the challah. She made the chicken soup, and we had a goose, and she fed the goose every night with corn, so we would have a big pate goose.
Oh, how beautiful!
My mom was a modern cook as well. I remember my mother making French food, and I learned never throw out even a piece of bread. Even today, I eat everything.
Did you have a favorite dish? Did you have a favorite dish that she liked?
Chicken, fried chicken. Fried chicken, you dip it in flour, you dip it in eggs, and then you dip it in breadcrumbs and put it in a refrigerator so it would stick well and fry it.
And chicken paprika.
Now, what happened? What happened when the Germans invaded your area of Holland, Hungary?
Hungary joined Hitler in March, and we had a Passover dinner, and my father got up and kissed us over the head and told us to go to sleep. And an hour later was banging on the door, and they took us to out of the city where they gathered the Jewish people. And then we ended up in a carol car, and next thing I knew, Arbeit macht frei. And I never heard of Auschwitz. I never knew that existed. I remember asking myself, does anyone know that I'm here? I felt so alone. I felt so thrown out, as if I had done something wrong. It was a total surprise, unexpected, unanticipated, and all we had was each other then. And of course, all we have is each other now. So cooperation, not competition, not domination. We had to really learn to transcend our needs and commit ourselves to someone other.
Right.
That
Now,
was very important.
So you were deported to Auschwitz with your mother and your father and your sister Clara, and your sister
Magda.
your sister Magda. Sorry, yeah, I'm going to repeat that. You were deported to Auschwitz with your mother and your father and your sister Magda. Where did Clara disappear to?
So Clara was already in the camp when her Christian professor, Mr. Bauer, put on some kind of a uniform and smuggled her out. And when I arrived from Vienna to Prague, I saw advertisements, Clara giving a concert, and I knew she was alive. And she was waiting for us, and she decided that she's going to be my mother. So even when I went to the agent at the airport, she would push me aside, and she said, "That's my little one." And she took over for me because she decided.
Yeah.
that
So let's
I
go
am
back.
her
Let's go back for a minute to being on the train to Auschwitz and not knowing where you're going and what happens when you got there.
This is what I remember. As I told you, my mother told me, we don't know where we're going, we don't know what's going to happen. Just remember, no one can take away from you what you put here in your own mind. This is what I tell the children in school. Stay in school, pick up as many pieces of paper as you can, because more doors are going to open up for you. So I'm a big seller of staying in school and stop smoking pot and so on. I preach, and somehow I think children want to hear what is the right thing to do. So I do that. I'm very active as much as I can. I tell children that they are the ambassadors for peace and goodwill. I call them ambassadors. You never treat a person as they are. You treat them as if they were what they're capable of becoming.
Let's go back a minute to when you got off the train at Auschwitz, and could you tell us what happened there?
I saw the sign, Arbeit macht frei, work makes you free. And immediately we were separated. People had to go over 40 here, under 14 here, all young mothers with small children. They all went to the gas chamber immediately. So when it was our turn, my mother was in the middle, and both of us were holding on. And this guy turned out to be Dr. Mengele, asked, "Is this your mother or is this your sister?" I never forgave myself. I said, "It's my mother." So he told her to go to the left, and I followed my mom. I never forget him telling me, "You're gonna see your mother very soon. She's just gonna take a shower," and promptly I was taken to the other side. So when I was interviewed by this person, who was a prisoner herself from Poland, she was there since 1941, and told me that while I was going to the theater, she was suffering, and so she pulled out my earrings and I was bleeding. And I said, "By the way, when will I see my mother?" She pointed at the chimney. And she said, "She's burning there. You better talk about her in past tense." And my sister Magda hugged me and said, "The spirit never dies." So today, I feel that it is my responsibility to tell people what happened, that my mother didn't die in vain, and I will do that as long as I live, to tell people what happens when good people do bad things, very bad things.
Yeah.
That you're not born to hate, you learn it.
Well, we hope, one of the things we hope is that the more people hear your experiences and other survivors, that they will realize the depth of evil that a person can commit, and as you say in your writings here, is that we all have a choice. Now, when you were in Auschwitz, you were with your sister Magda the whole time, which I think that one of the things that helps people survive these kinds of inhumane situations and terror and death at every moment is having somebody that you care for and somebody that cares for you. And I know you had quite a few death experiences when you went from first in Auschwitz, and then the death march to Mauthausen, and then another death march to Kungakirchen. And could you share with us some of the near-death experiences that you had?
I know when I was on the death march from Mauthausen to Gunskirchen, when you stopped, you were shot and put in a ditch, and I revisited that place myself, and I began to stop, and the girls that I shared the bread with, that Dr. Mengele gave me, I really wanted to eat it, but then I did not. I climbed up and sent it, and they carried me so I wouldn't die. And when cannibalism broke out in Gunskirchen, and I turned to God, I think you want to watch the movie, The Sound of Music. It was there. I asked God to please help me. I'm not going to touch human flesh. And God told me to look down, and I had grass to eat. So I can't is not in my vocabulary, because even then I chose one blade of grass over against the other. So when I go to a classroom, I can't. I put it on a board, and then I take the eraser and I take the T and the apostrophe. I can. Why? Because I think I can. So think about your thinking, and I think Jews are very good in self-dialogue. And they're very good at answering a question with a question. How are you? Well, how do you think I am? There is a wonderful way that we can communicate. I have a couple of handouts. I'll send it to you. This is one of them, the difference between a victim and a survivor. I don't have time to hate, because if I would hate today, I would still be a prisoner. But forgiveness is not that I forgive you for what you did to me. It's a gift that I give to myself. Otherwise, I would be still a prisoner of the past. So I am here to tell you that you grew up in a family of people who learned that suffering makes you stronger.
Now, before we get to liberation, Audrey, can you tell us a little bit about how you learned about your mother and father being Holocaust survivors?
So I was born in 1954, and my parents had to make a certain amount of money to have me. This is a story.
$60, the two of us together.
But my dad had suffered from TB, being an underground fighter, and it started to come back. So when I was about 3 years old, they moved to El Paso, where I grew up. So I was born in 1954. So I'm 68 now.
And I drove myself to the hospital because his boss didn't allow him to go without, paying.
Wow.
But anyway, there was a little Hungarian Jewish community in El Paso. It was really actually a nice place to grow up. It was very diverse. And but it was not talked about. I had no idea about her history. I was in Sunday school, and I was around middle school, and we studied the Holocaust. And I guess I don't remember the moment, but I talked about it at home, or my dad used to take me to Sunday school. Maybe I mentioned it to him, and then he said, "Oh yeah, that's your mom." And actually, the students in the Sunday school knew. But anyway, I became aware, and then I was sort of labeled that kid, that had the parents.
And at that point, did you begin to ask them questions, or?
I did not. It was sort of not really. It was not topic of conversation.
Okay.
It really was not open for discussion. My dad was very protective of my mom, and he talked about his war experiences. He had some book he would open up, and my dates would come over, and I'm like, oh my God, really? But
She was a partisan.
She never, nothing.
Your father was a partisan, and your mother was a concentration camp survivor, and so he probably had many more stories of heroism. And
not really. I do remember him asking. I think he was a very pacifist kind of a guy and very sensitive. And I asked him once. I said, "Did you have to hold a gun?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Did you ever kill anyone?" He said, "I can't tell you." So that's about the most I ever talked to him about it. I just knew it was not something you talk about.
All right, so now we're going to go back to Edith with liberation. You were you're liberated in. Could you tell us a little bit about the day of liberation, and then all the physical rehabilitation that you had to do with all the illnesses you had?
All I can tell you that I met one of the liberators, and I hope that you get to interview him as well. And it's the 71st Infantry, and he was part of it. That we were in Gunskirchen, and things were very, very bad. As I told you, cannibalism broke out, and I was among the dead. I didn't know that, but there was a hand holding my hand, and I looked up, and I was telling Oprah, and she got up and said, and I said, all I saw was a lip. He was black. And I said, yes. I had tears. I saw him, tears in the eyes and M&Ms in the hand. So if you come to my house, I give you M&Ms. My picture is on it.
And how did you get to, you were so ill. How did you get from Austria back to your home in Hungary?
Well, it was Czechoslovakia at that time, called Košice now, Kassa, Hungary, when I lived there. So my mother tongue is Hungarian. Clara took over my life and just took me to the hospital and took me to the mountains, the Tatra Mountains in Czechoslovakia. And I waited every day that my mother is going to come and my father is going to show up, but they didn't. They didn't. So I ended up saying not what, but what for. Viktor Frankl talks about meaning in life and purpose in your existence, very existential. I had nothing to live for, and I became very suicidal. And I know that God talked to me and told me, if you die, that's not the answer. You have to be for something rather than against something. And that's how I became Dr. Edith Eger. That's how I preach about education for children, to take it seriously and stay in school. There is one thing is important to say, that we have genocide as we speak, but never in a history of mankind such a scientific and systematic annihilation of people existed when 15 educated people decided that they can put 30,000 Jews in the oven in one day.
Yeah. And in your own town, there were only 70 people who survived out of 15,000 people.
I think 70 came back to my hometown. And people would say more people came back than left because they took over the Jewish homes. If you go to Germany now, you see the name of the people who lived in that house. They don't want to run away from it. And I respect that. The largest Jewish population today is in Germany, in Europe.
Well, I think, part of it has to do with the Russian immigration of the Russian, I don't mean Russian, but, people from Belarus and Latvia and Estonia and Lithuania, those people, some opted to go to Germany as opposed to going to Israel or coming to the United States. How did you meet your Bella Eger, your husband?
Bela came to visit his girlfriend, where I was with other survivors to get healthier, and so he was with the girlfriend and kissing and hugging. And someone told me that he is in the TB hospital, that maybe he will help me to find it and getting there. So I'm 16, but that time I was 17. I was very skinny. I didn't really look very good because I had typhoid fever and I didn't have any hair. I had a little kerchief. And so I looked up at him. He was almost 10 years older than I was, with gray hair. And I asked him if he would be so kind and help me. And he hardly looked at me and said, just meet me at the station. Yes, sir, tomorrow. I was at the station. And then we got off. And the first time he looked at me and said, what did you do before the war? He was so obnoxious, the way he talked down at me. I thought to myself, such a terrible Hungarian. I'm going to show him. And I said, I was a ballerina. And he said, that reminds me of a joke. It was very funny, but then I did a split right in front of him. I'm not dead yet. And we began to talk, And he became very interested that I knew all the Greek gods and goddesses, that somehow I had all that information. And then I was there for 3 weeks, and they sent me away, and we began to correspond. I think I still have some of the letters, like 20 pages, and that's how we got married in 1946. And the following month, the doctor told me I'm pregnant. So I'm happy. And the doctor is wanting me to have an abortion. And I got up and I said, "Sir, I want to give life." And my little girl was born almost like a 10 pounds, a big girl, thank God. And that's my oldest daughter. And then she came home one day. I want a sister. Everybody has a sister. I must have a sister. So we decided that if we make $60 together, then I can have a second child. And so I went to the Lutheran Hospital in Baltimore in 1954. They put me in a crib, you know. That didn't happen in Europe when I had my first child. So next thing I knew, I'm in a bed and the nurse comes and I say, "How long do I have to suffer?" She said, "You had your baby 4 hours ago." And I said, "That's America." And
Wow.
America, she was born, and it was just the most precious, wonderful experience for my daughter having a sister, and she really had 2 mommies.
Now, when you were in El Paso, first in Baltimore, and you didn't know any English, I know that Bella knew English because he had studied in a private school in England. How did you take evening classes in English, or how did you?
I listened to the radio all the time. I went to school at night to learn English. I was very, very ambitious. I didn't have $6 to get off the boat. And the Red Cross gave me $6, which I paid back many, many years later because I did my doctoral work at the military hospital. So that's how both of us were very ambitious, and he became a CPA. His brother wanted him to sell chickens, and I said, no, he's going to go to school. And the brother was very, very unfortunately unhappy. He never liked America. He became a salesman, and it was unfortunate because he believed that we're going to bring out the money from the Eger family. That was one of the wealthiest families in Czechoslovakia, and that didn't happen. We had nothing when we arrived, but we worked and worked, and I'm still working. I don't believe in retirement at all.
Good for you.
I'm much better now, and I want to be a good role model, that when I am in my deathbed, I'm going to be very grateful for all the things that God has given me to be able to talk to you today and let you know that you come from good blood.
And Audrey, how old were you when John was born, your third sibling?
2.5. 2.5.
And
2.5, and she stood in front of my bed and said, it's time to put John in a garbage. That's how much she welcomed her brother.
Which is fairly normal.
Very normal. Thank God I didn't chew her out, and I just told her to tell me more, and she didn't want a little brother. And even today, I tell you, their relationship could improve.
Did you feel that you had a Hungarian Jewish community of survivors in El Paso? And did that sort of help you in terms of feeling like people understand who you are and where you came from? It was almost like a self-help kind of therapy group.
Not only that, but I treated a couple of rabbis, and they trusted me because the community wanted him to stop teaching at the university and just commit himself totally to the temple.
And tell us a little bit about when you started going back to get a high school degree, a college degree, and then a PhD in psychology.
I never finished high school. I got a PhD and I never finished high school. I can tell you that much. I was put in a class called English as a Second Language. I begged them to take me in, and they did take me in January on probation. And I was in a class, and most of 99% were Mexican. And then he talked to us to write an essay. And I didn't know what an essay was, but he said, it's like the priest. Tell him what you're gonna say, and then say it, and then tell him what you said. So I went home and I wrote an essay. Tell him so I put whatever I put it now, and then I put it in the way I thought was what he wanted. And I got the first prize in that class, and I graduated cum laude. And what I want to tell you, that I never showed up for my graduation. I had such survival guilt, and I didn't think I deserved it. Today, I would never do something like that. I would scream from the top of my head.
Good that you don't have because guilt is a very destructive kind of way of being connected to the past. And you are a person who is living for today and in the present. Audrey, do you remember when your mother went back to school? Did you help her with any of her work? What was it like for you kids having your mother go back to school?
Well, I was already in high school when she started school, like a senior. So I pretty much left the house while she went back to school when I was living in the house, but we really had separate lives in terms of me going to school, she going to school. And, she was very ambitious, and she, at the time, had divorced my dad. So she had met this group of friends and, anyway, I think it was good. She enjoyed it. And then she became a teacher, and she taught at my high school.
Oh,
so that was interesting. And everyone loved her, of course.
What was that like for you?
They all loved her. I was just like, okay. She taught psychology, I believe. And they just thought she was a hoot. And
I always invited guest speakers. I remember I taught my school transcendental meditation. And I'm talking 1970, that was just not existing much. But I made the class very interesting. They stood in line to get in my class. I made it very interesting.
But then when I left home, she went into the graduate school. It got a lot more serious about her PhD. But I was already in college and kind of leading my own life. And she reunited with my dad, and they had their thing going on. It was very nice.
So people tell me you went back to him. I said, no, I married him as a child. The second time I was a woman to a man. I didn't go back. We had a wonderful new beginning, and the rabbi was as wonderful. Who actually ended up, he was my patient, and I think my life has been very colorful, and I know I'm going to be very pleased on my deathbed and not asking what the world has given me, but what I was able to hopefully be a good role model, especially to the young people, that they are the ambassadors, I call them, for peace and goodwill.
So, Audrey, when you were growing up, your mother today has certainly a lot of psychological theories and methods that have, helped thousands of people. When you were growing up, did you hear any of these messages? Are there any particular messages that you heard from your mother growing up that you feel were part of you growing up?
Well, one of the messages that I remember is don't wait for people to come to you. Like, you need to go out and get what you need. And so I kind of live by that. Yeah.
To be assertive, not non-assertive or aggressive.
So the other thing that's sort of humorous is that she became a therapist, my sister became a therapist. And so, and I knew I did not want to be a therapist. I became a leadership coach. But while I was going through my coaching training, we talk shop more than you would ever think. And I never really realized it till someone asked me, well, what's it like being with all these psychologists? And I was like, well, I don't know. It's sort of normal. And then I realized it's really not. It's not common in other households.
But being a leadership coach, you're also in a position of helping other people. So,
Totally.
Totally.
It's a helping profession. It's just different. It's not therapy.
Yes, but your sister Marion is a psychologist helping people, and you're also helping people in a different kind of way to self-actualize. And what about your brother John?
After 2 girls, my son was born, and my late husband started to be so happy because he remembers studying about Rabbi Akiva Eger. If you go to Jerusalem, there is such a street. I know we found that in Jerusalem. So, but John did not develop like my girls. He didn't sit up, he didn't walk, he didn't talk. So in 1960, 5 doctors told me that he may go to a school, they use the word retarded. And I said, this is America, where do I get a second opinion? This is a country of second opinion. And I ended up at Johns Hopkins with a neurologist, Dr. Clark, and took my son for a week, sat me down and said, your son is not retarded. He's gonna do everything everybody else does. It's gonna take him longer to get there. So I want you to consider stop going to school and take your son to the cerebral palsy clinic so he can learn. And that's what I did. I dropped out of school, and my son John graduated as a top 10 student from the University of Texas. That's what survivors do. I'm gonna send you this, to be a survivor and not a victim. I'm not a victim. It's not my identity. I was victimized. It's not who I am. It's what was done to me. Big difference.
Beautiful. Well, you certainly have been an amazing role model, not just for your children, but also for thousands of other people, about how not to give up and to look for alternatives to whatever problem one has. And what does John do today?
Well, John is very unhappy that he cannot really work, and the way he has been doing a lot of work for free, and he's not doing much of that. But I can tell you that John goes to Washington and fights for the people who need special help. So he doesn't stop that. I speak to John, and I think he goes to the mayor to the town and fights for the people who need better ways to communicate with the
Disability. He's
Disability.
like a disability advocate.
advocate.
Right. You have 3 children who are all involved in helping, so that, again, we see what a role model you have been. And also the fact, one of the reasons that many children become helpers in one way or another is that they develop the heightened sense of empathy towards the survivor parents. I see Audrey shaking her head here.
Empathy, not sympathy, but empathy.
That children of survivors have, that impels them, motivates them to get into the helping profession. Tell us a little bit about the psychological work you have been doing and continue to do to this very day. You've really helped people in situations where at times you even have endangered your own life in doing the therapy work that you've been doing.
A German woman was on her deathbed, and someone asked her, it was in the New York Times, someone asked her, why did you risk your life to save Jewish lives? And her answer was, my father told me that was the right thing to do. So in 1985, I was the keynote speaker in New Zealand to 2,800 people who are called the righteous Gentiles. And that was a wonderful experience for me to thank them for not standing by, but to know that love is not what you feel, is what you do. And I think the fathers are the role model to their children, the way the father treats their mother. So that's what I tell men. Remember, children don't do what you say, they do what they see.
Absolutely. You're 100%, you're 100% right. Exactly. Let me just say, Edith, you have a lot of important messages to give people. And I just wanted to share with the people that are listening that suffering is universal, but victimhood is optional. And we choose to hold on to our victimization. And so I think the message is to all the people that are suffering out there is that you don't have to continue to be a victim. And you certainly are a role model for that.
You cannot be a victim without a victimizer. So victims blame and adults don't. Adults look for the solution and see not revolving, but evolving. I think that is an important message, not to do the same thing. And I think you can do the same thing, but maybe from a different perspective. So I don't have time ever to be a victim, but yesterday's victims can easily become today's victimizers when you identify with the aggressor, and that we call the Stockholm Syndrome.
So you mentioned early on that you could not really ask your mother too many questions, And I'm wondering, has the dialogue about her past changed at all since she has been much more open about her experience? And also, I know that she went to Auschwitz after 35 years, and she came back as a very different kind of person. And how did that change your relationship with her and her past?
Yeah. The big change was I traveled with her to Europe, and that that's in her second book called The Gift.
Gift certainly is a gift, and I hope that people pick it up. There's a lot to learn from it.
Right. I had sort of a heavy hand in this one. Because, and that really changed for me. There's a story in there about being with her in the Amsterdam Opera House, and they had a ballet. They had produced a ballet called the Dancer of Auschwitz or something like that. And after it was about her, there was a prima ballerina and then someone playing Mengele. And it was on May 4th, which is Liberation Day, and they take it very seriously in the Netherlands. And so we were in the opera house, the ballet's over, and the prima ballerina came and to the king and queen seat where we were sitting to give her the flowers, and the spotlights came on, and the entire audience stood up and just cried to see her there alive, and you know how much joy she radiates. It created so much healing in that moment, and I was just hysterically crying. I was like, oh my goodness, this woman is, you know, I need to pay attention. She really represents a lot of healing for a lot of people. And since then, I have done a little work actually with The Gift, with some some resilience talks, and especially with COVID, it's been a really tough time for a lot of people. And there's a lot of lessons in this book that are transferable. And I've used this is more of a how-to book, I think, to help people, you know, operationalize these theories in their own lives. So I've become more interested in the work and how it has affected me, and being more honest about that, and more, you know, just discovering more. I was just really not even aware of how much her trauma affected me. And I went and studied, you know, I went to the Portland Institute of Trauma and learned how to be a trauma therapist, you know, because I wanted to learn more about how it may inhibit me in my growth. So it has sort of been a great opportunity for me to grow. We never quit growing, right? So
absolutely. I mean, look at how she's growing in her 90s, you know, and
it's amazing. If we can all be like that when we're 94,
right. We hope for that. Now, have you reached out to other children of Holocaust survivors? Have you discussed with Marion how the two of you felt you've been affected by your mother being a survivor? Have you read Helen Epstein's book on children of the Holocaust to see how other children, how other homes were different? Or
no, really, to tell you the truth, her story was not my story until fairly recently, if you can believe that. We had my married and kids and whatever, and but that trip really changed it for me, about being more curious. So we're not part of, actually this year, I did a Yom HaShoah talk in our Jewish community, and people were like, who are you? Because I just wasn't part of what I was doing. But now I'm talking about it much more, and I'm much more comfortable with it. I wasn't very comfortable with it. Yeah, so I am doing more, and some people like randomly contact me and say, you know, what was your experience like? Can I tell you mine? And I listen. And we have since my mother did not talk about it, it really was not part of our upbringing. And people who especially raised in New York, you know, who had raised with a lot of Holocaust survivors, their experience was very different than mine. And they're like, really? We do this. I don't know that many people.
Are your children interested in their grandmother and grandfather? Are they asking her questions? Did they read her book?
It's interesting. My daughter just took a yoga teacher training, and they read Man's Search for Meaning. And she came up, you know, it was just fascinating. She goes, I'm going to read The Choice again. I think it will mean so much more now. And my son has always been interested. He does some of her social media. And so he's always been interested. But they, you know, geographically, we've been in Texas. She's been in California. They're not geographically close. So
they don't get to see her that often.
Right. My sister's children, Marianne's children, grew up closer to her physically.
They grew up, she grew up in LA.
Yeah, San Diego.
It sounds like in recent years, your mother's Holocaust experience has become much more a part of your own identity. Yeah. And hence, as a result of your own identity, your need to do something with it. Like the fact that you're giving a speech.
I agree. I really feel like, you know, she's 94. There's not many of her around. And I'm feeling more called to do more of this work. So it's not forgotten, but also like the whole, yes, I just feel like I need to, I don't know what it's looking like yet, but I'm being called to do, like been asked to be a speaker at a conference, second generation trauma. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I just feel like it's kind of coming to me and I'm being called to do it and I want to do it. I don't know I'm not sure what it's going to look like, but I feel like we're unique and that I've had this mother her story's been shared and I want to be able to not let it die. Yeah.
Well, I think that your mother's messages are messages that we in the second generation, third generation, and fourth generation need to continue to bring forth so that we have more humaneness in the world.
I agree totally.
Thank you so much, Dr. Edith Eger and Audrey for being with us today. And I think our listeners have learned a lot about overcoming trauma and how do we take a traumatic personal experience and do something positive and constructive with it for not just for ourselves, but for others as well. So thank you.